GSoC is a program. It's run by Google. It's to encourage people to take part in open source projects. And so basically you work over the summer. It stands for Google Summer of Code. And you participate by contributing code to an open source project over the summer, and Google pays you for it. So there are organizations which you apply to, and typically the organization list is announced sometime mid-Feb. By mid-March, participants are called to apply. The applications close by April. By May, you get to know if you're in or not. And June, July, and August is when you carry out the coding. So the criteria that they're looking for is basically that you will be able to complete the project. And the only way they know that you are capable of finishing what you started out to do is if they've seen your work before at some level. So you would think that it's only experienced people who would get selected, but that's not true. You can be someone who's entirely new to the project and still get selected, and a lot of people do. But how you show your mettle, how you show that you will be able to complete the project is by getting involved with the project as early as possible. Like now would be the time to start. Even if so the organization list comes out maybe in Feb mid, but start as early as possible. You can go to their GitHub page or wherever they've hosted their code. There'll be issues, there'll be PRs, pull requests. So issues are places where GitHub issues are where people file bugs reports of the program, and PRs are people contributing features to the program. It's called pull request to the open source project. So you can start by just getting involved on the GitHub issues and with GitHub PRs. I say GitHub, but it could be wherever they have hosted their project. The other thing is Slack IRC. So a lot of these projects have places where the developers answer questions or help out people with the project. They also discuss whatever they're going to implement or how they're going to implement. The day-to-day things about the project are discussed. So there'll be some chat platform. Typically, it's Slack. Earlier it was IISER. Some of the older programs, older projects hang out on IRC. The newer ones are Slack or even Discord nowadays. Getting involved over there also helps a lot. At the end of the day, when they see your application, it shouldn't be like it shouldn't be a foreign name entirely new to them. They have some idea, that okay, this person was involved with us for the last 3 or 4 months at some level. Like they've contributed to some issues. They've had some intelligent things to say on Slack about the project. So that is, I think, the most. It shouldn't be out of the blue for them. Like very unlikely you'll get selected if that's the first time they're hearing about you. But so if you get involved, that's the best way to improve your chances. Get involved with the project. There is a set of guidelines by Google on what your proposal should contain and all. So definitely stick to that. One of the important things to keep in mind are there's deliverables. That is a concrete list of ideas that you are going to implement for the open source project, and a timeline that is and how you're going to implement it also. Like be concrete about how you're going to go about it. There's also mention a timeline, that is you'll be given a typically 12-week period. So by this week I will complete this particular feature set. Also put in a buffer week or two, so in case you don't complete you don't reach the deadline of that particular week, you have a buffer week to extend it. So they are pretty flexible with that. As long as you're clear about what you're going to do. So yeah, timeline and deliverables, I think, yeah, get those things covered well. Julia Lang is the open source project organization that I was working with. Julia Lang is a scientific computation oriented programming language, and it was designed to replace MATLAB, and it's newish. It's been there for about 10 years now, and the whole ecosystem has grown. There are a lot of people who are moving to Julia. It's a really fast growing language. And what I particularly worked on was visualizations in Julia Lang, using Julia Lang. So particularly there's this, it was a animation library, and what I worked on was morphing objects, implementing a smoother morphing in the animation library. So that was what the organization that I was working for. Some of the things that I picked up over my GSoC experience was how to write code more in an organized manner. So when you write code, typically, especially in academia, it's a means to an end. You write code to plot a graph or to get some data out of your simulation and publish it. But when it comes to open source projects, people are going to read that code is going to be committed to a Git repository, and people are going to have to read it later to understand what you're doing. So code organization is important. Formatting is important. Those are some subtle things which you really don't take care of when you are a lone programmer, doing things for yourself, versus working in a community and contributing to an open source project. So that was something which the mentors mentioned and helped me through. The other thing that, using Git effectively. So Git is version control, how to revert your code, how to make pull requests, how to merge it. Git is, it's a pretty much the entire open source community. A lot of them use Git for version control, and that's something which I really didn't know how to use effectively before. I've definitely improved on my Git skills. And apart from that, writing tests to cover your corner cases. Code doesn't always behave the same. Expected behavior on all inputs. That was something which. There's also documentation. You always document your code because it probably happens to you when you write code. Like, you don't understand it 1 week later. So that, there are tools to help you document your code. That was another thing which the mentors really stressed on, and pretty much any open source project stresses on that. Whatever you write is documented well. So those are things which I picked up over GSoC. Reading code, that's very important. It's easier said than done, but reading code is the best way to get your hands dirty with the project, get into the understanding what a code does in the project. So when it comes to, you don't have to understand the entire code base, but you can treat certain parts as black boxes. But the relevant parts that you would like to contribute to, that is something which you have to identify for yourself, what you would like to contribute to, and what parts of the code that you need to understand before you can, implement something in the project. But you don't have to know the in and out of the entire code base of that open source project. And for this, there are certain tools. There's a tool called, first thing you can use is GitHub's search feature. There's a website called SourceGraph, and there's also a tool called AG. That's the command line. It's called the Silver Searcher, and there are a couple of other tools too. You'll like, if you're using VS Code or using Vim, your editor will have plugins to help you browse code much more easily. Then, yeah, so to get started, actually, some of the things that you can, one easy way, or one of the low-hanging fruits is many projects have newbie issues. That is, so projects have a lot of issues that come up. People file bug reports, and the developers don't have time to fix all of them. And so sometimes they identify certain issues which can be easily fixed by newcomers to the project. That's definitely something which you should look into to get started with helping that project out, the organization out. Similarly, there will be certain feature lists. They'll have a to-do or roadmap. These are the things that they want to implement in the future, or along the in the near future. And some of them would probably be marked as beginner friendly, something which beginners can take up and try to implement themselves. So just fork the repository, clone it, and start typing, start coding, and see what you can contribute.